Ever since I was a child, I thought quilts were really pretty and I loved the look of it. And I didn't really know much about them, but I thought, hey, maybe one day I'll make one. When I was 16 years old, I got my own sewing machine. I was all prepped to do some outfits that I wanted to make, but no one could teach me how to sew, and I was conflicted. I was trying to figure out how to sew on my own. I made a few projects. They were okay, but they were nothing worth being crazy about. I'd say Holly Hobby was a little bit of an interest for me, and I loved the idea of wearing patchwork clothes or something in that type of fashion. So I made my own top and I had like a patchwork heart that I put in the center of it. I was frustrated because I didn't know how to sew, so I was asking all these people, could you please teach me? And they're like, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, oh, what do I do? I did make some clothing, but it was really difficult and I didn't really know what I was doing and I didn't really have a passion for it. After a few years, one of my friends, it turned out, made quilts. So I asked her for some help and she's like, I don't know what to say. So I bought a book and I tried to read it and figure out, okay, well, what's this mean? There were terms I didn't understand. The book just sat for a few years and I would look through it, wishing that I could make something out of it. It was at the very end of 2013 that we started attending a Mennonite church, and not your typical Mennonite church that you're thinking about. We could wear normal clothes. We looked like regular people there. There was a church member who said one day, I'd really like to have a quilting club if anyone's interested. In September of 2014, I went up to her and I said, I'd love to learn how to quilt. I've always wanted to. Please teach me. She was so sweet and she brought all this equipment. She brought some patterns and different things for me to have a project with, including bringing her own sewing machine. And she just went off trying to teach me. And I didn't really remember how to sew even the little bit that I did know, but she was patient with me and I really had a great time. She gave me some homework and said, I want you to do this one block, and this is a sampler quilt, so everything is different. You're going to learn different styles throughout learning how to make a quilt. So I started working on the same sewing machine I had at 16 years old. It was a really bad quality, not great for quilting at all. The next Sunday I said, okay, I finished it. She's like, already? She came over a few times and we would do the project together and she would give me pointers. But I just went off. I kept sewing and I was really into it. I had to depend on her for the pieces of the project, so while waiting in between, I started making another quilt. In time, she was able to continue to help me along the way with everything I needed for the first project. It wasn't until March of 2015 that I was able to finish that quilt. But I had already finished my other quilt before then. She had told me that she never actually completed a quilt. She would send it in to be finished. I know this is going to be like terms that you guys may or may not understand, but basically I was able to complete things that she had not done. And so she said, well, I think you're good. You can go off on your own now, and maybe I could get some lessons from you. I thought that was really sweet of her to say, because I definitely was a beginner, especially when I look back at some of my first quilts, but that first one was really beautiful. Over the years, I've made several quilts. I've sold many of them. I love making quilts. It's very slow paced, but it's so much fun for me. There's a lot of cutting, as you have already seen. There's a lot of piecing things together, and it takes a lot of hours per quilt. Once I was full-fledged into quilting, I got the Juki machine that I use now. I've had it for like 8 years. It was a great investment and I got it on sale too. Over the summer, my poor machine broke down and I had to get it fixed, and it took a while before I finally was able to do so. In August, I started a project making a baby girl quilt. I found a pattern that I thought was cute and I said, okay, I'm going to sell this quilt. But then in October, I found out that I was pregnant, and I decided, well, if I'm having a girl, I can keep this quilt. But it just so happened to be that I was having a boy. This quilt that you see me making here, I've made it before, but much smaller. And when I made it, I said, oh man, if I ever have another boy, I would love to have a quilt with this pattern. So that's what I did. I said, I'm going to make that quilt and I'm going to make it bigger and it's going to be beautiful and I can't wait. I am really glad that I was able to get into this hobby and that I've kept up with it and have loved it as long as I have. It's a lot of fun for me, and I don't think making clothes would be fun for me as it is making quilts. It's just, you're either a quilting person or a clothing making person. I would love to be both, and maybe there are some people that are both, but most of the time I've met one or the other. There are so many varieties and steps to making quilts, and I definitely have favorite parts and parts that I dread. However, when I get towards the end, I get so excited to see what the final product would look like. The border is really fun because I get to sew it on with the machine on one half, and then on the other half I get to hand stitch. And this sometimes takes me 2 to 5 hours to do, so I usually watch maybe a movie or two while working on it, and it's very relaxing. Sometimes I stab my fingers, but it's okay. It's all part of the process. I feel really happy that I was able to get into this hobby, and I hope that I can continue to do so and that my eyes will still work well as I get older. I've made quilts for each one of my family members, and so this will be the first one I get to make for my new baby, and I'm excited to see him with it and see if he likes it in the future. It's just really nice, so I'm going to fold it and put it away until he's born.